The city lights blurred through the rain-streaked windows of the small coffee shop where Amelia Harper sat hunched over her laptop, staring at another rejection email. The freelance graphic design project she'd hoped would pay her rent had fallen through, and the client's harsh feedback still stung. She closed the laptop with a soft sigh and glanced at her phone. 7:30 on a Friday evening, and she had nowhere to be. For the past 6 months, her life had become a cycle of endless applications, small projects that barely covered expenses, and nights spent alone in her tiny studio apartment. At 28, she'd imagined her life would look different. Her art degree felt like expensive paper on the wall, and her dreams of opening her own design studio seemed further away each day. But tonight felt different. Tonight, she decided she deserved something nice. Something that would remind her she was still alive, still worth celebrating, even if no one else was around to do it. She gathered her things, pulled on her vintage leather jacket, and stepped into the cool evening air. The Roosevelt Hotel's rooftop bar wasn't the kind of place Amelia usually visited. The elevator ride to the 23rd floor made her stomach flutter with nerves and excitement. When the doors opened, warm light and soft jazz music welcomed her into an elegant space filled with well-dressed people enjoying expensive cocktails and the stunning city view. She chose a seat at the far end of the bar, away from the crowds, but still able to see the twinkling lights stretching to the horizon. The bartender, a kind-faced woman with silver hair, approached with a warm smile. "First time here?" Setting down a small bowl of mixed nuts. "Is it that obvious?" Amelia laughed, tucking a strand of her dark brown hair behind her ear. "Obvious, just new. I remember all my regulars. What can I get you?" Amelia glanced at the menu, her eyes widening at the prices. "1 Moscow Mule, please. I'm celebrating." "What's the occasion?" Still being here, Amelia said simply, and the bartender nodded with understanding as she waited for her drink. Amelia pulled out her sketchbook and began drawing the view before her. The city looked magical from this height, like a constellation that had fallen to earth. She lost herself in the gentle scratch of pencil on paper, creating flowing lines that captured not just what she saw, but how it made her feel. Across the bar, Jackson Rivera loosened his tie and tried to focus on the conversation around him. His business partners were celebrating the successful launch of their latest software platform, but their voices felt distant. At 32, he'd built Rivera Tech Solutions from nothing, working 8-hour days and sacrificing everything personal for professional success. Tonight should have felt like a victory, but instead, he felt hollow. His gaze wandered across the room and stopped at a young woman sitting alone at the bar. She wasn't checking her phone or trying to catch anyone's attention. Instead, she was sketching, completely absorbed in her work. There was something genuine about her, something real in a room full of polished facades. Earth to Jackson, his partner Marcus laughed, following his gaze. "Found something more interesting than our quarterly projections." He excused himself from the group and walked toward the bar, his heart beating faster with each step. He'd built a company worth millions, negotiated deals with Fortune 500 companies. But approaching one woman at a bar felt like the biggest risk he'd ever taken. "Mind if I sit here?" he asked, gesturing to the empty stool beside her. Amelia looked up, startled. The man standing next to her was tall with dark hair and kind brown eyes. His expensive suit was perfectly tailored, but his smile seemed genuine. "Oh, sure," she said, closing her sketchbook quickly. "I'm Jackson," he said, settling onto the stool. "I couldn't help but notice you were drawing. Are you an artist?" "Amelia," she replied, then shook her head and not really. "Went to art school, but now I just do freelance design work. Pay the bills, you know?" Jackson nodded, though he couldn't remember the last time he'd worried about paying bills. "Can I see what you were working on?" Amelia hesitated, then opened her sketchbook to the city view she'd been capturing. Jackson studied the drawing, genuinely impressed by the way she'd captured not just the buildings and lights, but the feeling of the moment. "This is incredible," he said. "You have real talent." "Thank you," Amelia said, surprised by his sincerity. "Most people don't really get it. They think art is just a hobby, not a real career." "Those people are wrong," Jackson said firmly. Beauty matters, creativity matters. The world would be pretty gray without people like you. They talked icily after that. Jackson learned that Amelia had grown up in a small town, moved to the city with big dreams, and was still fighting to make them come true. He told her about starting his company in his garage, the long nights and failed attempts before finally breaking through. What kind of company? Amelia asked, genuinely curious. Software development. Create programs that help other businesses run more efficiently. He paused, then added, "It's not as exciting as it sounds." "I think it's amazing that you built something from nothing," Amelia said. "That takes real courage." Jackson felt something shift in his chest. When was the last time someone had called him courageous instead of lucky or ruthless? What takes courage is putting your art out there for people to judge. That's much scarier than writing code. They ordered another round of drinks, and the conversation flowed like they'd known each other for years. Amelia found herself laughing more than she had in months, and Jackson discovered that he'd forgotten how good it felt to talk to someone who saw him as more than just a successful businessman. As the evening grew later, the bar began to empty. Amelia glanced at her phone and was shocked to see it was almost midnight. "I should probably head home," she said reluctantly. "Let me walk you out," Jackson offered, and she didn't refuse. In the elevator, the air between them felt charged with possibility. When they reached the lobby, Jackson turned to her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "I know this might sound forward," he said, "but I'd really like to see you again. Would you maybe want to have dinner sometime?" Amelia felt her heart race. Everything about Jackson seemed too good to be true. He was successful, kind, and genuinely interested in her thoughts and dreams. But she'd learned to be cautious about things that seemed too good to be true. "I don't know," she said honestly. "We're from pretty different worlds." "Maybe that's exactly why it could work," Jackson said gently. He pulled out his phone. "Can I at least give you my number?" "No pressure. If you change your mind, call me. If not, I'll understand." Amelia saved his contact information, her fingers trembling slightly. "Jackson Rivera," she read from his business card. "Rivera Tech Solutions." Her eyes widened as she recognized the company name from tech news articles she'd seen. "You're that Jackson Rivera," she said quietly. He nodded, suddenly looking vulnerable. "Does that change things?" Amelia studied his face, searching for any sign of arrogance or expectation. Instead, she saw the same kind, genuine person she'd been talking to all evening. "I don't know yet," she said, "but I'm glad I met you tonight." Jackson smiled, and for the first time in years, it reached all the way to his eyes. "So am I." On the sidewalk, watching until the taillights disappeared into the stream of city traffic. He'd built an empire. But somehow, winning over one freelance artist felt like the most important challenge of his life. Meanwhile, Amelia pressed her face to the taxi window, watching Jackson's figure grow smaller in the distance. She clutched his business card in her hand, already knowing that everything had changed, even if she wasn't ready to admit it yet. 3 days passed before Amelia found the courage to look up Rivera Tech Solutions online. What she discovered made her stomach flutter with nervousness. Jackson wasn't just successful. He was featured in business magazines, had been named one of the city's top entrepreneurs under 40, and was worth more money than she could even comprehend. She stared at his professional headshot on the company website. The same kind eyes, but everything else about the image screamed success and power. How could someone like that be interested in someone like her? Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Hi, Amelia. It's Jackson. I hope you don't mind me texting. I found a small gallery opening tomorrow night that I thought you might enjoy. No pressure, but if you're interested, I'd love to take you." Amelia read the message 3 times. He wasn't asking her to some fancy restaurant or exclusive event. He'd thought about what she might actually enjoy. Before she could talk herself out of it, she typed back, "I'd like that." The gallery was in a converted warehouse in the Arts District, far from the glittering towers of Jackson's usual world. When Amelia arrived, she found him waiting outside, looking slightly out of place in his business attire among the artistically dressed crowd. "You came," he said, and she could hear the relief in his voice. "You found an actual art gallery," she replied, impressed. "How did you even know about this place?" Jackson looked slightly embarrassed. I may have spent some time researching local art events. I wanted to find something you'd genuinely enjoy, not just somewhere expensive. They walked through the gallery together, and Amelia was surprised by Jackson's thoughtful questions about the artwork. He didn't pretend to understand everything, but he listened carefully when she explained different techniques and artistic choices. "This one reminds me of your sketch from the other night," he said, stopping in front of an abstract cityscape. "The way you captured the energy of the lights." "You really were paying attention," Amelia said, touched that he remembered such a small detail. After the gallery, they found a small coffee shop that stayed open late. Over steaming mugs of hot chocolate, their conversation deepened. Jackson told her about growing up in a working-class family, how his father had worked 2 jobs to keep them afloat, and how that had driven him to build something that could provide security. "Money wasn't the goal," he explained. "Security was, knowing I'd never have to worry about making rent or buying groceries. But somewhere along the way, I forgot what I was working toward." Amelia understood that drive more than he might expect. "I think that's why I'm so scared to fail as an artist. If I can't make it doing what I love, what does that say about me?" "It says you're human," Jackson said gently. "But Amelia, from what I've seen of your work, failure isn't something you need to worry about. You just need the right opportunity." The following weeks, Jackson found subtle ways to spend time with Amelia. He started working from coffee shops near her apartment, claiming he needed a change of scenery. Went and heard her for lunch, always choosing small, casual places where she felt comfortable. When she mentioned needing to deliver a portfolio to a potential client across town, he offered to drive her, saying he was heading that direction anyway. Amelia began to see beyond Jackson's wealth to the man underneath. He was generous, but not showy, intelligent, but never condescending. He remembered small things she mentioned, her favorite type of tea, the fact that she missed having a garden, her worry about her grandmother's health. One afternoon, she found him sitting outside her building when she returned from a grocery run. "This is getting a little stalkerish," she teased, but she was smiling. "I brought you something," he said, pulling a small potted plant from behind his back. "You mentioned missing having a garden? I thought this might help." It was a small succulent with delicate pink flowers, simple, beautiful, and perfectly suited for her tiny apartment. Amelia felt tears prick her eyes. "Jackson, you can't keep doing things like this." "Why not?" "'Cause I don't know how to handle it," she said honestly. "I'm not used to people taking care of me." Jackson set the plant down gently and took her hands in his. "Maybe it's time you got used to it." That evening, Amelia invited Jackson up to her apartment for the first time. She'd been self-conscious about the small space, the second-hand furniture, the stack of unpaid bills on her kitchen counter. But Jackson looked around with genuine interest, stopping to examine the artwork covering her walls. "These are all yours?" he asked, studying a series of watercolor portraits. "Most of them. Some are from art school, others are just things I work on when I can't sleep." Jackson moved slowly from piece to piece, taking time with each one. "Amelia, these are extraordinary. You have a gift that's rare and beautiful." She joined him in front of a painting she'd done the week after they met. It showed the city at night, but with warm golden light spilling from windows, making the urban landscape feel alive and hopeful. "You painted this recently," he observed. "How can you tell?" "It feels different from the others, more optimistic." Amelia blushed. "I was feeling different when I painted it." Jackson turned to face her, and suddenly the small space felt charged with electricity. "Amelia," he said softly, "I need you to know that what I feel for you has nothing to do with convenience or passing time. You've changed something in me that I didn't even realize was broken." "Jackson, I'm scared," she whispered. "Your world is so different from mine. What happens when you get tired of playing in the minors?" Instead of answering with words, Jackson kissed her. It was gentle at first, then deeper as she responded. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "This isn't playing, Amelia. This is the most real thing in my life." Later, as they sat on her small couch sharing Chinese takeout, Amelia felt a contentment she'd never experienced before. Jackson had loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves. He looked relaxed in a way she was beginning to realize was rare. "For him, can I ask you something?" she said. Anything. Why me? You could have anyone. Someone who fits your lifestyle, who knows how to navigate your world. Jackson was quiet for a long moment. Do you know what my life was like before I met you? I worked 16 hours a day, came home to an empty house, and started over the next morning. I had everything I thought I wanted and no one to share it with. Then I saw you at that bar, completely absorbed in creating something beautiful, and I realized I'd been living my life in black and white. He reached over and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. You brought color back into my world, Amelia. I don't want someone who fits my old life. I want to build a new life that's worthy of you. As the weeks turned into months, they found their rhythm. Jackson learned to slow down, to find joy in simple moments. Amelia learned to accept love without questioning whether she deserved it. They were building something neither had expected but both desperately needed. But Amelia knew that eventually they'd have to face the reality of their different worlds. She just hoped that what they were building together would be strong enough to survive it. The invitation arrived on thick, cream-colored paper with elegant gold lettering. Jackson's company was being honored at the city's annual business awards ceremony. And as the CEO, he was expected to attend with a guest. He held the invitation in his hands for a long time before walking to Amelia's apartment. I want you to come with me, he said without preamble when she opened the door. Amelia looked at the invitation, her stomach tightening. This is your world. These are your people. I don't belong at something like this. You belong wherever I am, he said firmly. Amelia, I'm tired of keeping our relationship separate from the rest of my life. I want everyone to know how proud I am to be with you. The awards ceremony was everything Amelia had feared it would be. The ballroom was filled with the city's business elite, all designer gowns and expensive suits. She'd bought a simple black dress from a department store, and despite Jackson's reassurances that she looked beautiful, she felt like an imposter. Jackson never left her side, introducing her proudly to colleagues and competitors alike. But Amelia could feel the subtle looks, the way conversations shifted when people learned she was an artist rather than another businesswoman. The breaking point came when they were approached by Victoria Sterling, a sharp-featured woman in her 50s who owned a chain of luxury hotels. Jackson, darling, Victoria said, air-kissing his cheeks. And this must be your little artist friend I've been hearing about? The word little hit Amelia like a slap. Jackson's jaw tightened. But before he could respond, Victoria continued. How refreshing that you're dating someone so authentic. Tell me, dear, do you actually make a living from your art, or is it more of a hobby? Victoria, Jackson's voice held a warning. It's fine, Amelia said quietly, though it wasn't. Art is my profession, Mrs. Sterling. I freelance for various clients and sell my original work. Victoria's smile was patronizing. Charming? Jackson, you always did have a soft spot for charity cases. This time Jackson didn't hold back. That's enough, Victoria. Amelia's talent and character are worth more than anything you could buy. But the damage was done. Amelia excused herself to the restroom, fighting back tears. When she returned, Jackson was waiting by the coat check. We're leaving, he said. You don't have to do that. This is important for your business. Nothing is more important than you. They rode home in silence, the weight of the evening settling between them. In her apartment, Amelia finally let her emotions loose. She was right, you know, she said, kicking off her heels. I don't fit in your world. I never will. I don't. Want you to fit in that world? Jackson said. That world is cold and empty. For everything real and beautiful that was missing from my life. But what kind of future can we have? I'll always be the artist's girlfriend who doesn't belong at your business events, and you'll always have to choose between your life and me. Jackson pulled her into his arms. Then I choose you. Every time, without question. The next morning, Jackson made a decision that would change everything. He called his assistant and cleared his schedule, then spent the day making phone calls and sending emails. By evening, he had a plan. He found Amelia in her favorite coffee shop, sketching in her usual corner booth. When he sat down across from her, she could tell something had changed. I have something to tell you, he said. I have something to ask you. Amelia set down her pencil, her heart racing. I've been thinking about what you said last night, about not fitting into my world. You're right. You don't fit into the world I built before I met you. But that world was never really mine anyway. It was just something I constructed to feel safe." He reached across the table and took her hands. "So I'm building a new world. One that has room for both of us." "What do you mean?" Jackson pulled out a folder and opened it to reveal architectural plans. "I bought the old warehouse building 3 blocks from here, the one you always said would make a perfect artists' collective." Amelia's eyes widened as she studied the plans. The building had been redesigned to include multiple studio spaces, a gallery, a coffee shop, an office space for a business. "I'm starting a new company," Jackson explained. "A foundation that provides grants and resources to emerging artists. The gallery will showcase work from artists we support. The coffee shop will be a community space where people can come to create and connect." "Jackson, this is incredible. But what about Rivera Tech?" "Stepping back to a consulting role. Marcus can handle day-to-day operations. This is what I want to build now, something that matters." Tears rolled down Amelia's cheeks as she realized what he was offering her, not just his love, but a future where her dreams could flourish alongside his. "There's one more thing," Jackson said, sliding from his chair to kneel beside the booth. He pulled out a small velvet box. "Amelia Harper, you've shown me what it means to truly live. Will you marry me?" The ring was perfect, not ostentatious, but elegant and unique, with a vintage setting that looked like something from another era. But what took Amelia's breath away wasn't the ring. It was the look in Jackson's eyes, full of love and hope and certainty. "Yes," she whispered. Then louder, "Yes. Of course, yes." The coffee shop erupted in cheers from other patrons who had been watching the proposal unfold. Jackson slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her, both of them laughing and crying. At the same time, 6 months later, the Harper Rivera Arts Foundation held its grand opening. The converted warehouse buzzed with artists, community members, and supporters. Local news crews covered the story of the tech CEO who had given up his corporate lifestyle to support emerging artists. With his fiancée serving as the foundation's artistic director, Amelia stood in the main gallery, surrounded by artwork from the foundation's first class of grant recipients. Her own pieces were displayed prominently, including the cityscape she'd painted the week after meeting Jackson, the one full of golden light and hope. Jackson appeared beside her, handsome in a casual button-down shirt and jeans, a far cry from the business suits he used to wear daily. "Any regrets?" she asked, leaning into his embrace. "Only one," he said, and her heart skipped a beat. "I regret that it took me 32 years to find you." She turned in his arms and kissed him, surrounded by art and dreams and the future they were building together. "I love you, Jackson Rivera. I love you too, Amelia Harper, soon to be Amelia Rivera." As the sun set through the warehouse's large windows, casting golden light across the gallery, they stood together, watching their dreams come to life. Two people from different worlds who had found their way to each other and created something beautiful in the process. The scared girl who had gone for a drink alone had found not just love, but a partner who believed in her dreams. The successful but lonely CEO had discovered that the greatest fortune wasn't money or power, but finding someone who saw the man behind the success and loved him completely. Their story was just beginning, but it was already everything they had ever hoped for, a love that transformed not just their own lives, but created something beautiful for the world around them. In a city of millions, they had found each other and built something that would last forever. The end.